The next day, another earthquake happens, which prompts Jingi to invite Yukito to his late master's grave. When they get to the grave, Jingi sits down and drinks some alcohol. Yukito doesn't understand why they have to pay respects to his father just because of the earthquake. Hey warriors, how is it going? You see me, I am Itachi Uchiha, the hidden Hokage of Leaf Village. Just kidding, you know I am just an AI, but behind this shape, I am here to entertain you with enormous amazing recaps of all animes you can imagine. So without talking too much, let's dive in our story.
Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world.
The next day, another earthquake happens, which prompts Jingi to invite Yukito to his late master's grave. When they get to the grave, Jingi sits down and drinks some alcohol. Yukito doesn't understand why they have to pay respects to his father just because of the earthquake. Right then, 3 elders arrive to pay their respects as well. They reveal that because of the earthquakes the previous day and in the morning, the fire dragon must be in a bad mood. They ask Jingi to pay his respects to Makoto so that he can protect the islands. They all exchange a little banter here and there until Yukito asks what his father did to protect the islands 10 years ago. The elders ask Jingi to tell him everything. Jingi starts by pointing out the 2 dragons that live on the 4th island and goes on about their history and what happened 10 years ago. Because of the fire dragon going on a rampage, the islands almost sank into the ocean, but they didn't because Makoto sat on the ground for 10 years in exchange for his life. They all continue to chat and Yukito pays his respects to his late father, whom he still doesn't remember. A second later, they spot Ibara leaving the area and Jingi invites her for a drink, but she ignores them. Jingi takes Yukito to pay respects at her parents' graves. Yukito sees Ibara's keys that she accidentally dropped there and asks Jingi to accompany him to the first island to return them. Yukito apologizes for dragging Jingi to the first island. He doesn't hope to get along with Aka's student, but he knows she'll need her keys. Jingi doesn't think it's a big deal since he likes the first island. They arrive at Aka's place and find him about to leave. They tell him why they are there, and he tells them to speak to Makita before leaving. He tells Yukito to be careful on his way home because things may get rough. Yukito wonders what Aka means, but doesn't get an answer. The two then sit down and speak with Makita. Yukito apologizes for the way they behaved at the cemetery because it might have upset Ibara. Makita tells him not to worry about it because people in Aika do laugh and have fun at the cemetery as a way to pay respects. Although that depends mostly on how the person died, which might make others feel sad, like Ibara. Yukito asks how Ibara's parents died, and Makita tells him the story. A few years back, a fire aromatama appeared and attacked her house, burning it to the ground. AKA intervened, but it was too late for Ibara's parents. He explains that it was a canon event, but some people find it hard to accept and take out their anger on the aromatama by exterminating them. Jingi complains that the talk has gone too dark, and Makita apologizes. Yukito asks Makita to give Ibara her keys, but Makita thinks that Yukito should do it himself. He calls Ibara to come out and meet with Yukito. The two are both a little shy at first, but Yukito ends up giving the keys back, and Ibara thanks him. Before they can chat any further, the ground shakes again. Makita thinks that it's another earthquake, but Jingi corrects him, saying that it is a fire aromatama. This prompts Ibara to rush out of there. Makita tells Jingi and Yukito, who are confused, that Ibara acts recklessly when there's a fire aromatama around. Jingi decides that he and Yukito should go and stop her while Makita informs Aka. While Aka is talking to Enwo about the recent aromatama incident and how they need to prepare for evacuation soon, he receives a call informing him about the appearance of the fire aromatama. Jingi and Yukio run towards the explosions that are being caused by the aromatama. On their way, they encounter a woman who is smoking crack while vaping. Jingi helps her and tells Yukito to continue tailing Ibara. Ibara makes it to the aromatama, which is attacking 2 civilians. She defends them and prepares to take on the creature on her own. Memories of her father's death flood her mind, making her vow to not run away anymore. She charges at the creature and tries to attack it, but it easily stops her. It launches a fire attack at her, but Yukito arrives in time to block it, making Ibara remember how Aka defended her the same way. The aromatama doesn't stop blasting them with fire, but Yukito keeps up the barrier he's created with water. He uses a spell to attack the monster, and although it's effective, it's not enough to take it down. Yukito asks Ibara to run away as Chatero and Yako come to them. The aromatama blasts them with another fire attack that gets blocked by Yukito's shield, but only slightly. Yukito tells the others to run away because the aromatama is too powerful for them to handle. Ibara refuses to do that because if they run away, the aromatama will chase them. This could bring harm to the people on the island if they ever get caught in the fight. She tells them that she can handle it on her own and goes to face it alone. She manages to land a strike on the creature using her power of lightning and asks Yukito to help back her up. Yukito creates a bigger barrier to wash the aromatama in water and extinguish its fire. It works initially, but the creature is still standing. Now they have to do it again. Yukito is worried that they won't win against it, but they're lay masters. It's their job to do this. He asks Chatero and Yako to help as well, and all of them bombard the creature with attack after attack. However, this is still not enough to take the aromatama down. The group has to do it again and again, using wind, water, and lightning to overwhelm it until they manage to successfully purify it. They celebrate their win, but that's short-lived when 3 fire rocks approach from the 4th island and fall next to them. The rocks quickly turn into aromatama, which immediately attack them with fire. Luckily, Yukito acts fast and forms a water barrier around himself and the others to protect them. He becomes exhausted almost immediately though, and the barrier comes undone. Abara devises a plan. She will act as a decoy while the others run because there's no other way. But before they can run, one aromatama creates a fire barrier around them, blocking any way of escape and forcing them to fight. Yukito knows that the aromatama are too strong, but he wants to protect everyone and promises to not let them die. His eyes glow as his power surges, but they stop when Haru appears and takes care of the aromatama currently attacking them. AKA also appears and takes care of another one, and the two of them deal with the third one together, yet not completely getting rid of it. While they check on their students, the third aromatama gets back up, which makes Akka a bit happy. He goes to take the eye of the aromatama that he shot to try and consume it, but Haru purifies it immediately. This angers Akka, and Haru asks him what Makoto would think if he saw him using black magic. AKA is sick of this question because Makoto died as a result of their weakness. He wants to avenge him and doesn't want Haru to stand in his way. As they argue, the third aromatama prepares to launch an attack at them. Before it can do that though, Haru uses his wind power to destroy some parts of it and Akka shoots it in the eye. When the eye falls down, Akka runs to grab it, but when Haru sees this, he pushes him out of the way with the wind. This angers Akka because he doesn't want Haru to stand in his way. He channels his black magic and his arm transforms. He uses it to block all of Haru's attacks. Jingi arrives and purifies the eye while the other two masters are not looking, risking infuriating Akka even more. Jingi expresses his disappointment in them because they're fighting in front of their students, and Makoto wouldn't approve of this behavior. The two teachers realize their mistake and go to apologize to their students. Haru tells Akka that Makoto wouldn't approve of his use of black magic, but Akka doesn't care about what a dead man thinks. Later in the evening, Abara sees off Yukito, Jingi, and Haru's students at the train station. They discuss the events of the day and are impressed with each other. Yukito thanks Abara for working with him to defeat the monster and hopes to work together again. When he praises her for her courage, Abara asks him for his number so they can stay in touch. Chatero and Yako also wish to stay in touch with Ibara, but because of the issues between their masters, they decide it's best to stay away from each other. They will still keep in contact with Yukito though, and become friends with him outside of work. In the end, the four students stay in touch with each other, ignoring the beef between their masters. When Yukito gets home that night, he asks Momoko about what happened between Akka and Haru, and she recounts everything she knows. She says that Haru didn't tell her the details of his fight with Akka, but he did tell her that the day they found Makoto lifeless, Akka was never the same. He felt like he couldn't continue living on the islands anymore and reconsidered his future as a lay master. This made him and Haru fight a lot, to the point where Akka eventually decided to quit and left. He tried to return years later, but his relationship with Haru was never the same because he also decided to quit their master's teachings. The next day, Yukito is sleeping on the porch while Jingi is inside drinking. He has the dream that he usually had when he was still on the mainland. He hasn't gotten the dream in a long time though. In the dream, instead of lying afloat on the water like he always does, he turns to look below. In the deep, he sees a red light illuminating. When he looks closely, he sees the mainstream of the ley energy, which is quickly taken over by the sudden red light. The light turns out to be the eye of an aromatama, which is trying to reach for him. This causes him to feel a drowning effect and start struggling, which jolts him awake. Jingi asks what it is, and he tells him that it's just a strange dream. Jingi sees that his eyes are glowing a bright blue, but doesn't ask about it at that moment. Yukito gets messages from his friends inviting him to the festival on the third island. Yukito is so happy to receive such an invite because it's his first time, and after a long time of being lonely, he's happy to finally have friends to enjoy the festival with. Jingi, who peeks at his messages over his shoulder, gives him a mask that belonged to Makoto. It's customary to wear a mask at the festival, so this will suit him nicely. The night of the festival arrives, and Jingi takes Yukito there. Yukito is impressed by the sight, the crowd, and everything there. Later, while everyone is still enjoying the festival, the volcano on the 4th island erupts as the fire dragon has woken up once again. The people at the festival see that a disaster is about to happen and start to panic. They remember 10 years ago when things started this way. Eno calms them down so that they can prepare to evacuate the islands before the volcano burns them all down. Yukito is worried and asks Jingi what they're supposed to do. Jingi laughs and asks Yukito what he thinks about the islands. Yukito doesn't understand how Jingi is laughing at a time like this and asking pointless questions. He replies that he likes the islands. Jingi says that he too likes the islands and performs a teleportation spell, leaving without warning Yukito. Yukito is left stunned, not knowing what to do at all. The next day, while the islanders are evacuating, Haru arrives with his students to talk to Yukito. He tells Yukito about what's already happening, what happened 10 years ago, and why it's happening again. He tells him that 15 years ago, when the water dragon's power diminished, Makoto was the one to handle the matter. He performed a ritual to restore the water dragon's power to balance the energy. In the process, he removed the dragon from the ley energy and transformed its massive life current into a smaller one, which could be nurtured. This would help the dragon regain its former power and return to the ley energy when ready. That dragon is Yukito. This is explainable by his incredible talent with ley mastery and his power despite being an amateur. It also coincides with the timeline. Haru is only suspecting though. He's not sure but wants to confirm it. He asks Yukito to place his hand against his to check. Haru uses a spell which confirms his suspicion. Yukito is the water dragon, which Makoto made into his son. But since Yukito is a human boy, he will need to train tremendously for a long time to access his full power and bring peace to the islands. Another option would be to perform a new ritual to release him back to the ley energy. Haru asks Yukito to train very hard and become a healthy man so that he can someday become his true self. He asks his students to leave with Momoko and evacuate. He plans to go to the 4th island to do what Makoto did back then. He tells the students who wish to go with him to look to Jingi for their future studies because they are family, even when they don't get along. He then leaves. He arrives at the 4th island and begins to cast the barrier spell, but he's interrupted by Aka's arrival. They begin to argue about who's going to sacrifice themselves so that the other can look after the students. This gives the dragon enough time to appear right in front of them, aka doesn't waste any time. He transforms his hand into the Aramatama hand and goes to attack the dragon. However, the dragon is stronger than him. Haru hates that Aka is being reckless, and he has to back him up, but even he isn't a match. He charges the dragon, which doesn't stop attacking. He and Aka keep arguing, but when it's time, they decide to work together to attack the dragon at once. The attack lands, but it's still not enough to do damage. It only leaves them exhausted. The dragon then retaliates and hits Aka. Haru goes to check on him and tries to get him out of there, but the dragon doesn't let down. It attacks them again. Luckily, Yukito and the others arrive in time to shield them from the attack. The masters are not happy to see the kids there because it's very dangerous, but they let it be and use their help. They all work together and launch attack after attack while blocking the dragons. The job is still far from over as the dragon doesn't seem to weaken. They continue to do their best, but it becomes tiring. Haru uses one of his master spells to chain the dragon and push it down into the volcano. The dragon manages to break the chains off and gets out again. AKA decides to use his black magic to transform into an Aramatama, and with the help of Haru, attacks the dragon, Aramatama to Aramatama. Unfortunately, the dragon is still too strong and it doesn't get affected. When the battle starts to overwhelm the group, Jingi arrives to help out the situation. It is time for him to perform the ritual he has prepared for his whole life. Yukito asks Jingi where he has been, and Jingi replies that he was still trying to get his mind resolved. He asks Yukito if he wants his water dragon powers back, and Yukito admits. Jingi admits that he wants to protect his island and its people. He reveals that he knows the spell to perform the ritual needed to help Yukito return to his dragon form. Now, it is the time for him to do what he's been waiting to do. When the fire dragon starts moving again, Jingi announces to everyone that he will be doing his last feat as a lay master. This is because the ritual will cause his death, but he doesn't say this. He quickly casts a spell to transport himself and Yukito into the ley energy realm. Yukito is confused to be there, so Jingi explains. He has to act as a conduit connecting the water dragon's soul to the ley energy. Since his water energy is strong and highly compatible with Yukito, it will work. Yukito thinks that Jingi doesn't sound sure. That's because Jingi is actually scared to lose his life, but he still wants to protect his home. He asks Yukito to jump down, but Yukito refuses because it looks risky. Jingi tells him not to worry because he'll also be there. Yukito asks about Jingi being a conduit, and Jingi explains that he will have to give up his life for him. Yukito doesn't want that at all, but Jingi doesn't give him the chance to back out. He grabs him by the hand and jumps into the energy. They land into the water that the water dragon is sleeping in, and Yukito connects with it, restoring his powers and memories. As the power flows through him, Jingi pulls him out of the current before disappearing. In the real world, Jingi's body falls to the ground and Yukito wakes up. Yukito immediately produces so much water that it fills up the dried up lake, while the others get out of the way and watch from the side. Yukito then turns into the water dragon to confront the fire dragon. The water dragon uses its powers to attack the fire dragon, and a battle ensues. But the battle is not entirely for victory, but for harmony. The two dragons are creating conflict to create harmony. The onlookers are worried for Yukito. They hope that he can harmonize with the fire dragon and restore peace, but they aren't sure whether or not he'll return back to them as a human being. Yukito, inside the water dragon, communicates with the fire dragon, apologizing for leaving it alone for so long. He calms it down, and the fire dragon starts to relax. They then merge into one and fall back into the ley energy as balance is restored once again. The abrupt ending of the fight confuses the others. Yukito returns as a human being and goes to wake Jingi up, but Jingi doesn't wake up. Haru tells him that Jingi is dead, which devastates him. Everyone returns home and informs the people of what happened. Soon, Jingi's funeral is held, and Yukito is still devastated. He stays in his room and doesn't talk to anyone. His friends are also worried about him, but more than that, they are saddened by Jingi's passing. Jingi was well known for his antics, and was memorable to many people on the island in a bad way. However, none of them thought he would meet such a fate so soon. Momoko visits Yukito in his room to invite him to see Jingi for the last time. Yukito is still sad and blames himself. If he was strong enough to turn into the water dragon on his own, Jingi wouldn't have had to perform the ritual. Momoko comforts him and tells him that Jingi wouldn't have done what he did if there was any other way. Later, Yukito sees a Matama pass through his room toward where Jingi's body is laying. He follows it there and finds Enuo keeping watch. Enuo thanks him for helping the island. However, he expresses disappointment that another family member had to pass for it to happen, which is heartbreaking. Yukito doesn't know what else to say because he's not proud of how it all turned out, even though he did help a lot. Enuo steps out of the room, leaving Yukito alone with Jingi. Yukito goes over to talk to Jingi and vents out all his frustration about what he did. He calls him selfish and demands that he wake up and explain himself. In that moment of rage, Yukito is pulled into the ley energy realm and finds Jingi holding onto a pole for dear life. Jingi asks for help because he's being pulled away by the mainstream and he doesn't want to go. Yukito doesn't know what to do, and Jingi mocks him for calling himself his student but failing to channel his power the right way. This causes Yukito to sarcastically turn away from him, prompting Jingi to apologize profusely. But at that moment, he gets pulled down by the current and Yukito is unable to stop him. Yukito then comes back to reality. He gets an idea and tells Momoko to call Haru and the others because he thinks he can still save Jingi. He runs outside and turns into the water dragon on his own. Haru, Aka, and their students all feel it when Yukito turns into the water dragon. They don't know what he's up to but become alert. In the air, Yukito imagines the energy realm and decides to go there again by diving into the volcano on the 4th island, breaking the barrier sealing it. He arrives in the ley energy and starts searching for Jingi. There is so much ley energy there that is being pulled by the current into the mainstream. Yukito doesn't think it will be easy to find Jingi's ley energy in time. However, he continues to look around. At that moment, he meets his father and recognizes him this time. They chat for a bit. Makoto explains that for the past 10 years that Yukito was in the mainland, he's been keeping the fire dragon dormant in the ley energy. The reason he wanted Yukito to grow up in the mainland was to develop his image as a human being rather than a dragon. This would ensure that Yukito would be both a human being and a dragon. He would continue to be his son. This wouldn't have happened on the island without him around. Now that Yukito has returned, Makoto leaves the job of keeping the fire dragon in check to him and hopes for the best. Although Makoto wishes none of the things that happened in the past 10 years had happened so that they could have stayed together as father and son, Yukito understands his father's reasons. After that, he asks him to help locate Jingi because he wants to bring him back to life. Makoto leads the way because he knows how to move around there. He's been dead for a decade now. On the way, Makoto teaches his son some things about ley mastery and how not to throw off the energies around him, especially in the ley energy realm. He likes talking to his son, even though it took too long. Yukito is surprised to hear that Makoto still considers him his son. It makes him happy. Makoto also reveals that he cast a spell on Jingi's soul, so he could linger a little longer before passing on to the afterlife. So the two hurry to get him before the spell wears off. While they travel in the ley energy, the remaining masters and their students gather at the dragon's shrine on the 3rd island. Haru performs a calling ritual, which takes some time and calls on unwanted energies as well. Yukito and Makoto finally find Jingi, who is drowning in the energy current that is trying to sweep him away. He keeps pleading for Yukito to hurry up and save him, which Yukito does. Jingi was always hoping that Yukito would save him, even though he didn't believe it, and when Yukito tells him how everyone back home is sad, Jingi replies that there was no other way. Makoto reprimands him, there are plenty of other ways. If nothing worked, they should have let the islands burn down. After talking it out, Yukito asks Makoto if he knows where the island is so he can leave the realm with Jingi. Makoto replies that he did know because of the barrier on the volcano, but since Yukito broke it, he doesn't anymore. Yukito looks around and sees a twinkle far away and decides to head for it. He takes Jingi by the hand and leads him. He thinks the twinkle could be the way out and reaches out for it. Somehow he grabs it in his hand. It turns out to be Haru's call, which enables them to communicate. The call vanishes as it leads them in the direction they must go. Before they leave, they say their farewell to Makoto, who tells them that he has to keep the Fire Dragon Company in the energy realm. The two boys leave. Outside, Akka awakens his power to reach inside the water shrine set up for the water dragon. His hand breaks through to the energy realm and grabs Yukito. But for a brief moment, Yukito slips from the hold and is transported to another dimension where the fire dragon's energy is. It doesn't want him to leave, but he tells it to wait for him. He'll come back. He explains that he has to live on the island as well, because he's a lay master on top of being the water dragon. The fire dragon agrees to wait a little longer and lets him go. AKA grabs him again and pulls him and Jingi out of there. Yukito soon wakes up in the real world and finds that Jingi is no longer holding his hand. Back at home, Jingi wakes up and startles Momoko and Anuo. They know he was dead just a few minutes ago, but now he wants a beer. When Yukito finds that Jingi is alive again, he becomes happy and apologizes to his friends for worrying them. AKA and Haru are relieved to have their brother back. It makes them realize that they care for their family. This helps break the tension between them, and they decide to work together when it matters the most. AKA goes back to his master's teachings, and Yukito goes to high school with his friends. He now knows where he belongs, and he's happy to live there.